Hi guys, good morning. Uh, on behalf of Lauren, AWS, and Redington, I welcome you all for a session on Are you ready for the remote workforce? Uh, our speaker, Mr. Kyle Pinto, will take you through on different AWS aspects and how AWS can help you with the remote work workplace in the current situation, right? So if you guys have any questions at the end of the session, you can just put it in the Q&A section, and at the end of the session, the speaker will address to your questions. You can also raise your hands. If you want to speak, if your question is long enough, you can just raise your hand, and I will unmute you guys so that you can go ahead and ask your question. All right, handing it over to you, Kyle.
Thanks a lot, Junaid. A very good morning to everyone who's logged in and has taken out time to hear what we have to say. My name is Kyle Pinto, and I am the president of sales for Lauren in India. I also have with me my colleague Mushtaq Khote, who's the CEO of Lauren Dubai operation. Mushtaq, maybe you could say hi. And both of us today are here to talk to you about the remote workforce essentially and how you can be ready for that. Now I know it may be a little late in the day, given it's almost 2.5 to 3 months that we've been working remotely. But there is a lot of learnings that we as a system integrator in India have got in these last few months uh, that we thought it'd be relevant to share with customers all around the world. I think the global nature of a pandemic and the implications of a pandemic are global, and I think maybe most of you on this call are not exceptions to the impact of that of the virus or COVID-19. And when we are still in Mumbai, rather we are still on lockdown. It's opened up in certain areas for essential services, but largely the corporates are still functioning at not more than 10% of the workforce in office. The rest still remains remote. Uh, so that said, there is a lot that we have learned, and I'd like to just share a little bit of perspective on that. I know during this pandemic, we've been getting through digital channels a lot of invites for product trainings, for webinars on solutions and use cases and things like that. And even myself, I've got a bulk of trainings and demonstrations from different product companies over these last couple of months. So I don't want to do anything of that sort with the audience today. I just want to share perspective. That's about it. And then I want to wind up with offering a few services that we can give to you along with AWS and Redington. And if there are some synergies or some needs that you have, we would be happy to help, right? So let me quickly bounce to the agenda. This is what we'll be talking about today. For many of you, it may be the first time you'll be hearing about Lauren. So I'll run you through who Lauren is, what we do, our locations across India and the Middle East. And then I'll quickly talk to you about the remote workforce and what some industry analysts are saying about the remote workforce, and how we'll then go to how digital transformation is playing a key role today for enterprises across different sectors or industry verticals. And we look at a pre versus post COVID perspective on that. Then we look at how AWS can help in enabling digital transformation. We look at some industry examples there, and we'll also look at a comparison between this digital transformation journey on premises in our own data centers versus the public cloud, and very specifically AWS cloud. Then I'll run you through a case study. It may seem odd that I've mentioned Lauren India there, which is our very own company, but I'll leave that suspense for later. We'll talk about how we have in Lauren India really done, I think, we've taken a really drastic step in the last couple of months when it comes to the cloud. And we'll wind up with a short one slide on how Lauren, Redington, and AWS can help. What are the services that we can offer to you? And then I'll open it up for a Q&A at the end. where my colleagues, Mushtaq and Junaid, also can pitch in if needed. Uh, so I don't intend to take more than 35 to 40 minutes to speak and then leave it open for 15-20 minutes on a Q&A. Right. Before I jump, I just want to quote Albert Einstein. He said, "In the middle of every opportunity, in the middle of every difficulty, sorry, lies opportunity." And many people talk about adversity or difficulty as being a season in the lives of enterprises where opportunities or ideas are uncovered, and that is something that I want all of us as an audience, as I do myself, keep that in mind as we go through this presentation. Right. So very quickly, Lauren, in numbers for you, we are a 28-year-old company founded in Mumbai, India, started by two gentlemen, Roland Pinto and Ratnakar Kanchan. And today we completed 28 years in March 2020, and we're running our 29th year. Started by these two gentlemen, now we are over 500 employees across India and the Middle East, servicing 800, I would genuinely say, happy customers in these regions. And we do this through some key partnerships. We've always been, and I think we will always be a partner driven company where we leverage technologies and solutions by best in class OEMs like the IBMs, AWS, Dell's, HPs of the world to provide solutions to our customers. Right? We do this across four lines of business. That's how we categorize ourselves and how we brand ourselves. The first is the cloud, and I'll emphasize a lot more on that today, where we work with AWS. We also work in three other areas, which you see on your screen. Firstly, the systems area or the infrastructure, as many of us call it, which is really related to on-premise data centers. Uh, then is the cyber security, where we focus right from the perimeter to the endpoint to the application database layer, and we cover all those vectors in cybersecurity as well. And we also have our own outfit, which is the Lauren Professional outfit, Lauren Professional Services outfit, where we offer services around data center management, facilities management, annual maintenance contracts for applications or infrastructure to customers across India and the UAE. All right. Uh, I spoke about a few partnerships that we had earlier. This is a little bit of a detailed view for you on that. Uh, we strongly believe in working with market leaders in their respective areas. So you'll see some very large names on your screen, and Lauren is probably, you could say, at the top, whether you could call it a titanium, platinum, advanced, premier level of partnership with these very prominent OEMs, and we work with them to service our customers. And this is my last slide on Lauren. We have over 800 customers, like I said, across different regions. These may be familiar logos to some in India who are attending from India as well as from the Middle East. Right, and we've been servicing customers. We have not been an industry-specific service provider, but we've been servicing customers across industries. Right. Let me jump into our main agenda for today. Now, maybe you'll have heard this term being thrown around or not, but the remote workforce is the new mainstream. Uh, Many industry analysts, including the likes of Gartner and IDC, have been talking about the remote workforce being the new mainstream, and believe you me, that this has been a topic of conversation even before the pandemic. Right, I have a couple of statistics that I can share with you, which the Harvard Business Review published in the month of August of 2019, which is almost a year ago, where they said that a concept called work from anywhere was taking prominence in the US, and companies like SAP and Akamai, who are giants in the US IT market, had already adopted such concepts of work from anywhere, which really meant that the office, as we know it, was just another building or another floor in a building. It wasn't really an office anymore. And they opened up this access to employers to just open up a laptop, a tablet, or even their mobile phones and really work from anywhere. And that concept was a huge success for SAP and Akamai, and was taking, I would say, was not just prominent but also growing across industries in the US even before the virus hit. And another statistics published by the Harvard Business Review was about how employees who would, and I would say these were largely millennials that were interviewed or surveyed. They said that they would be willing to even take pay cuts up to 8% in the US, just to be allowed to work from anywhere or work from home, which includes working from anywhere, right? So this concept was not new, and I believe that even though the pandemic has accelerated this new mainstream, we would probably see ourselves in such a remote workforce kind of situation, if not sooner, probably later in a couple of years, right? So that said, I think a lot of IT company, not just IT companies, but even CIOs and IT teams in large enterprises have been able to address this need to really supply or address the needs of end users across geographies so that they can work from home. And I think kudos to, if there are any CIOs on this call or IT managers and handling operations. I think we've seen a lot of IT managers and CIOs work probably through the night here in Bombay, and we've been helping them as well on that journey to ensure that users are not affected as they work from home, so that productivity can be maintained, right? So that now brings me to a very crucial point: is that if we're talking about working remotely or working from anywhere, and if you've heard of the Tata Group, which is a 150-year-old uh, group that was founded by Ratan Tata in India, they talked about having 75% of their workforce working remotely by 2022, right? And they're probably a workforce of about probably close to 7 to 10 lakh resources, and they are talking about having 75% of that workforce work remotely. But is that really something sustainable? And that question kind of begs: are we ready as enterprises to really transform digitally? And I don't want to throw this term too loosely, because I know it's been a buzzword for the last couple of years, and it still is today. DX, or digital transformation as we know it. Uh, but there is really a kind of funny or a meme that is going around that talks about uh, digital transformation, and the number one factor that led to digital transformation for companies across industries not being the CEO or the CTO, but literally COVID-19. And that is it may be maybe untrue. It's not generic. It's not applicable across industries, but that is true. We've seen for many industries that COVID-19 is the only reason why companies are now adopting digital transformation or beginning those journeys, right? Uh, we also had SAP publish a report. I think it was April 2020 when they published a report where they said 84% of companies believe that digital transformation is really crucial for improved business performance, but really only 3% of those 84% had even started initiatives, and hence COVID-19 has now accelerated that, right? And now, why would CIOs or CEOs really look at accelerating digital transformation? I've kind of mentioned three reasons that I feel are very relevant. There may be more, I'm sure there are more. But really, the flow of information is one of the most important challenges that we've had to address during these times. Uh, a lot of us have been working since we used memos, and there was really physical communication on pen and paper. And then we moved into emails. And now we have collaboration tools like Microsoft Teams or the likes of Soho, which we're using right now, where you can either do video calling or chat with your teammates or your colleagues. Uh, and that flow of information is something that has become really important now that we don't get to see our colleagues face to face. right? So that's one reason why companies have looked from moving away from just email solutions to really collaboration solutions, whether it's text or audio and video as well. Right. The second is how can we improve, if not maintain or increase employee productivity? And I do intend to elaborate on this point a little later when I talk about a case study. But really, is the impact of COVID-19 and a remote workforce in causing employee productivity to go down because of reasons like they're not able to access informations, applications, not able to talk to colleagues, meet customers, etc. Or is there ways in which we can ensure that through technology, productivity is going up? Right? And thirdly is that we need to plan for business continuity. Now, by no means, even being a system integrator or a tech company for the last 25 years, we also were not prepared for this. And a pandemic is very different from a usual, what we call as a DR, disaster recovery scenario, which could be a natural calamity or a fire at a data center, right? Where we see services go down for a couple of weeks or maybe a few days. But planning for continuity in such a time is a whole different ballgame. And that is why companies that have leveraged digital technologies, that have leveraged solutions that are available on the cloud, have been able to plan for this continuity a little bit better than those who have been stuck to traditional on-premise kind of setups. Right? McKinsey and Company also released a paper uh, in May 2020, and they talked about how any company that had adopted cloud for critical applications like ERPs or SAP workloads, for example, how they were able to manage this change much better than companies who are not leveraged the cloud. And that primarily being because the cloud, for example, AWS, is really designed to be accessed from anywhere in the world. It is not designed for a certain office or a certain premises, right? So that was a little bit on how we are perceiving the change pre and post, and how this situation and this pandemic has really accelerated digital transformation for these reasons that you see on your screen, right? And that brings me to some of the impacts that we've seen, the negative as well as the positive, right? What are the impacts that we've seen, and really from an IT perspective, on the way enterprises and employees are functioning? Right. Let me talk first about some of the negative impacts. This is not again industry specific, but this was a survey conducted by IDC in China, where obviously the virus originated, as many say. So IDC conducted a survey in China, and they kind of found these few reasons, or the top three reasons why how the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted us negatively. Right, one was obviously decline in revenues. Right, decline in sales performance had direct impact on revenues. Right. Secondly, in mostly in the manufacturing sector, the inability to resume production, and this applies to retail, manufacturing, etc., where if you're not able to produce, you're not able to sell, and that really was a big negative impact. And thirdly, for people like myself who are in sales, it's the inability to really visit a customer, right? This was cited as the top three reasons in China, the top three negative impacts. And on the other hand, we also looked at the top three positive impacts of the pandemic. Now, I don't want to sound insensitive by saying there is a positive impact, but definitely there are some learnings that we've had from this pandemic. And one of them was that we've all been pushed into out of our comfort zones to really look at improving our ability to collaborate over the internet. Right. So this really begs the question that is Lauren India, for example, working out of Mumbai, really able to only reach customers within our geography, within our country, or can we now talk to people outside of the confines of the geography? Uh, and that is one of the reasons why we're even doing this webinar. It's because we've realized over the last couple of months that let's leverage technology to get the message across to a lot more people. And we've seen the ability of colleagues to now who have never used technologies like Microsoft Teams or uh, Zoom, for example, for video conferencing or a go-to meeting, now getting well versed with such technologies and using them to really collaborate. And that was one positive impact. The second is the ability to really develop business online. Right, for a long time, I know at least for Lauren, in 27 out of the 28 years. We only relied solely on the traditional means of door-to-door selling, where we would go and meet our customers, spend some time with them, have a cup of tea together probably, and then talk business, talk solutions, and then try to deliver value. But now this has forced us to go even at a level of management. We have been able to now interact with customers online and really develop business opportunities online. And there's a lot of potential that I see to even continue this trend even after lockdowns are fully lifted, right? And lastly, I think, like I said at the beginning, information technology and CIOs and their IT teams have really come to the forefront during this time and have got the deserved recognition by delivering these digital transformation solutions and technologies as partners, etc., right? Which was not probably at the forefront before. And we've really seen this positively impact even the mindsets of CEOs and business functions to now reconsider the value of technology. So those are a little bit of our perspective on the positive and negative impacts of COVID-19. Now, digital transformation, before I jump to a little bit on AWS, digital transformation is really the adoption of a few strategies. I would, if I could put it like that, the adoption of strategies to move from a traditional manual way of doing things to a digital way of doing things. Uh, Now, unfortunately, there are some statistics that aren't very promising on the failure of most digital transformation journeys. Uh, but I think if planned well, every digital transformation journey can be a success as well. Now, this may be different for every sector, and the emphasis may be different. For example, for a retailer, at this time maybe looking at enabling omni-channel operations. Can I sell online plus offline? If Nike has to sell a shoe and it's not available in a store, can they do it online? If not, through their own website or their own e-commerce platform, can they do it through a third party? But can they look at different distribution models and look at omni-channel? That's for retail. For the automobile industry, maybe it sounds a little different. Can I do take order bookings for cars online and deliver a car to a doorstep? It may be that. For an airline, now with the health and safety regulations really at the forefront, can airlines look at contactless check-ins? Where I know we have machines at all the airports, those touchscreen machines where you can go and do a check-in. But can an airline now adopt a new process or digitally transform to the extent where the check-in is completely contactless? Right? So really, we're really talking about reinventing customer experiences as well as internally employee experiences through digital transformation, right? And that brings me to now, how can we really do that? And that's where I'll come to AWS. All right. I don't want to sell to you AWS at this point, but let me just give you an overview on AWS. I'm sure most of us will know about AWS being the market leader in the public cloud space uh, ever since its inception, which is almost 12 years now. And they continue to be the leader with 24 regions across the globe, 76 odd availability zones, and 212 points of presence, which is the largest global presence among the likes of AWS, Microsoft, Google, etc., who are featuring in the leadership quadrant of Gartner, right? Secondly, they have 200 plus services. The reason why I didn't define a number there is because day by day the number is going up and I didn't want to be incorrect. But I know that they have 200 plus services that they offer customers. And they do this currently with a global market share as of Jan 2020 of 33%. which is more than double of the closest competitor, which is Microsoft Azure. Right? So, how does AWS really help customers with that background on on who AWS really is today? How does AWS really help in enabling digital transformation? All right. Let me just check on time. All right. So we have an on-premise versus cloud comparison that we have put up on the screen for you, and I'll just run you through that, and then I'll take you through some of the solutions that are listed below as well from AWS. Now, typically in a digital transformation journey, funding is really important, right? Any customer or any enterprise looking to transform digitally uh, requires funds because technology is at the forefront and innovation is at the forefront of any digital transformation journey. All right, and there are some reasons why we believe the cloud is the best option for any customer across any industry who has any intention to start or begin this journey of digital transformation. All right, and those are listed on your screen, and I'll just take you through a comparison, and maybe it will resonate with a lot of us. Right, firstly, on premises on your left, we talk about really capital expenditure. All right, and I'm really referring to the debt that is tied up for a period of 3, 5, 7 years when you invest upfront in infrastructure. This could be servers, storage, networking devices, etc., which are usually bought with 5 to 7 years warranty and hosted in our on-premise data centers or through a third-party service provider, right? Whereas the cloud offers you really operational expenditure where you pay month on month, right? It's not just paying month on month, but it's also paying for what you use month on month, right? So AWS, for example, charges per hour for compute services, right? They have a compute service which we know as EC2, and EC2 is charged per hour. Uh, and really, what that helps us with is we have uh, to really pay for what we use. So, should I shut down my server in 12 hours? Uh, I only pay for those 12 hours. If I've used my server for 20 days out of a 30-day month, I only pay for 20 days, right? So this helps me to really use my resources optimally and control the way I spend money. Uh, I by no means am propagating that the cloud is cheaper than an on-premise option or buying a server, but I'm trying to say that we can use our money probably in a better way because we can determine when we want to spend and when we want to stop spending as well, right? Whereas on the on-premise side, you see I've mentioned underutilized resources. The reason I mentioned that is when we size for an on-premise investment. Let me take an example of an enterprise, a manufacturing enterprise looking to upgrade from SAP, probably ECS 5.0 or 6.0 to SAP HANA, right? Uh, Obviously, if you're going to invest probably $1 million in on-premise hardware to upgrade your SAP, you want to make sure that investment lasts you a good 5 to 7 years. So you will definitely approach the best in breed, uh, the likes of Dell or HP or Lenovo or IBM, who are really good server and storage vendors that we work with as well. And you'll get your SAP HANA to be sized accordingly, and you'll make sure that you're provisioning for a long-term investment. So assuming you have a need for 100 GB of space today, you don't want to provision for 100, you want to provision for 300 GB of space because you know that in 5 years, these same servers need to provide me with 300 GB space because of the way the business is going. However, what happens is that that technical debt is left unutilized until and unless you really reach that threshold of 300 GB. And this is not just on storage, it's on compute as well, right? So a lot of times we over provision resources on premises and they lie unutilized. There was a prominent example taken with an e-commerce giant in India, where we celebrate Diwali in India around October, November, and they had a big Diwali sale coming up as an e-commerce giant, they release a lot of discounts and offers to customers for Diwali. And what they did is they ensured that they bought servers. They invested crores of Indian rupees in on-premise servers just to manage the traffic or the concurrency of users during this Diwali sale. Yes, by no means was the sale a flop. It was a grand success for them, and the infrastructure did hold true at the time and did support the traffic. But what happened is soon after the sale got over, they realized that they didn't know what to do with that infrastructure. It was just lying unutilized or just 10% utilized, for example, right? And that is similarly what we see across industries where over provisioning of infrastructure has become a big problem, especially in areas where even real estate costs have gone up, and you just have servers lying unutilized and real estate lying unutilized. Whereas on the cloud, you have the option of scaling as you use. Uh, Netflix gave a really good example of their ability to provision 30,000 servers in half an hour with AWS, and also talked about how in the same span of time of 30 minutes, they could decommission 30,000 servers, right? And then only pay for that half an hour. So that was a really good example of the scalability of the cloud, right? And that brings me to the third point, that if we have so much of on-premise investment in servers and storage, we usually have, whether it's on rolls or third party, we have a lot of our resources tied up in running those operations. So whether it's the servers and the storage, you'll have your OS, your virtualization. We have different resources with different skill sets, working on shifts to make sure that the lights are on, the servers are running, and the application uptimes are maintained. However, with the cloud, the infrastructure as a service really frees up IT teams of those responsibilities and really gives you more time to engage in more business centric initiatives. And when I say business centric initiatives, in this case, I really am referring to innovation or digital transformation, right? Thirdly, uptime SLAs in data centers. Uh, this is just through research, through a lot of customer interactions. We noticed that it's a little bit difficult to maintain. It's not like it's impossible, but it is difficult. Whereas the cloud gives you, and I talk about AWS particularly, on compute at least they give you a 99.5% uptime SLA, right? Some of you may know about AWS's SLA on reliability for storage as well with S3, which is 99.99911 uptime that they give, right? Which is a little bit difficult to maintain on premise, right? And another difference is that we also see that on premise you have rigid systems. Uh, and I know we have technologies like hyperconverged infrastructure and virtualization, containerization, and microservices that are being leveraged today. But largely, a lot of IT teams are still running traditional systems and monolithic applications. And these systems are pretty rigid in nature. So the provisioning of a server for a business user or a department takes a little bit more time as compared to what it does on the cloud, where in a matter of seconds, just through an API, you can provision a server, which talks about promoting agility and flexibility, right? A very common concept used in the AWS world is a fail fast approach, where they believe in trying something out, and if it doesn't work, uh, you just scrap it. And that's an approach that has been termed as a fail fast approach, which the cloud gives you the freedom to even try, right? And that brings me to the next point, which is really the time to market. Now, what an idea that may seem relevant today, if not implemented in the next week, may seem relevant in a week from now, or if not irrelevant, maybe a competitor has gone ahead and implemented that idea before we have, right? So, how do we reduce time to market from a technical perspective? How do we ensure that those new features in our applications, those new channels of distribution, uh, are launched before a competitor takes a step on us? And the cloud gives you that ability, because of the scalability, the not just the scalability, but the speed at which you can innovate, right? And I'm not just referring to compute and storage solutions. I mentioned a figure of 200 services that AWS provides, and this really talks about different areas, whether it's on the analytics side or the data lake side, machine learning, artificial intelligence, facial recognition, speech to text, etc. There are so many services that we can really leverage as platform as a service offerings, right? Uh, then also we look at the skill sets required. Now it is a common practice to outsource a lot of IT management to different specialized vendors, but we really see that the solutions and skill sets are varying across industries. And what I'm trying to say is that in our data centers we may have a server administrator, we have a OS administrator, we'll have a network administrator, and then each of these have levels like an L1 and L2 and L3 based on their experience or ability, right? Whereas with the cloud, it's really just one single platform that's fully integrated as an ecosystem, where you can leverage a partner like Lauren or even build your own skills around AWS to really have just a few resources managed instead of so many different skill sets, right? Uh, and that brings me to some of the limitations that we face on premises, right? I talked about a reduced time to market on the cloud versus an increased time to market on premises. And those increased time to market is largely because of the limitations of our systems on premises, right? And I'm no advocate that on premises doesn't have a use case. I believe that there is definitely always going to be a use case or a need to have servers on premises and data centers on premises. And we ourselves, as Lauren, are in that business as well. But there is the limitation of an on premise system is the speed and the rigidity that it has, which is something that is dealt with when you move to the cloud, right? And speed is of essence if we're talking about digital transformation, and especially digital transformation that affects an end customer, right? And that's what the cloud gives you. And last but not the least, we definitely should talk about security, and security is ground zero when we talk about the cloud. And the security posture on premises is not something that is, I would say, impossible to build. But this is a responsibility that a CISO or sometimes even a CIO will have to build from scratch. And this is at every layer, whether we're talking about the perimeter, which is your firewall, or we're even getting a little bit deeper into your application layer, your database layer, or even your endpoints, right? But on the cloud, AWS provides you all of the security compliances that you need, that are the regulations that the laws of the land command, right from the time you launch your first server, right, to have those compliances in place. And it doesn't become the responsibility of uh, the end user or the customer to ensure that infrastructure is compliant, while data and applications remain the customer's responsibility. AWS is very clear that infrastructure compliance remains their responsibility, and that is something that, whether it's BFSI or manufacturing or pharmaceuticals, it is already in place with AWS, right? So that's some of the differences that we see and how AWS as a public cloud service can really enable digital transformation. And I spoke about funding at the beginning, and I think a lot of IT budgets may have got probably moved down in our priority list. I was speaking to a couple of our customers yesterday, and uh, they were just telling me about how sales and marketing initiatives and those budgets are being prioritized, and IT budgets are being cut to fund different budgets like the sales and marketing uh, initiatives, so that they can recover lost revenues. And IT budgets have definitely, I wouldn't say probably in all cases they've not been cut, but they've probably just fallen down the pecking order. And that kind of has to do with the importance that innovation has at such a time where we are trying to survive more than we are trying to innovate. Uh, but that also begs to ask a question that if we have to innovate at this time and we are cutting IT budgets, can we leverage operational expenditure? Can we leverage a go-to-market where I only spend for what I use, and if I'm spending and it's not working, can I stop spending, or will I have held up investment that I make now, which I cannot recover tomorrow, right? And that's where cloud becomes a real enabler now, from a funding perspective as well, right? And let me just quickly touch upon a few AWS solutions that we've seen work with our customers. Um in India, we've worked with AWS Workspace, AWS AppStream, Workdocs, and AWS Connect very specifically. AWS Workspace is a fantastic virtual desktop solution or a desktop as a service solution that AWS provides. And it really gives end users uh, so for example, a good use case in the AWS workspace scenario is for new employees who are being onboarded during the pandemic or during the lockdown. How do you, instead of inviting this employee to office, which obviously is not possible, can you have that employee use their own machine but actually a virtual access a virtual desktop on cloud and really start performing or being productive from day one itself. Right, that was a use case that worked with us here, and a lot of customers have adopted Workspace for those reasons. Even if it's for just 5 or 10 users, they've adopted. Right, second is AWS AppStream, which is an application streaming service from AWS. So if you're running engineering drawing applications or CAD applications, it works really well for those use cases. AWS Workdocs is very similar to the other solutions like a SharePoint Online from Microsoft, which is really for collaboration. And one of the reasons it works really well is that it integrates with the different services that AWS offers, whether it's Workspace or even an S3 bucket, right, for storage. And lastly is AWS Connect, which is AWS virtual contact center service, uh, which now a lot of AWS, Amazon, the retail company, Amazon, in fact, runs their entire back office support center out of AWS Connect. And based on the success of their own support service, they were able to create this solution for other retailers or other online companies who want to outsource the contact center operation. So right from provisioning of a chatbot to have your first L1 ticketing tool in place to even IVRs and remote support over the phone. Right, so these were some of the solutions that AWS came up with. Right, and that brings me to my second last slide, which is about a case study, and this is a very recent case study. I decided that I must share this with you because rather than talking about industry references or success stories, I thought why not talk about our own successes in the last couple of months. So, law in India, we faced a huge. We're an IT company, a prominent SI in India, but we had our own challenges from a technical perspective itself. So for those who don't know, in India we follow an April 1st to March 31st financial year, and on March 31st, while we did record revenues for Lauren last year, and everyone was on a high. Soon as the lockdown was called on Mumbai, we were stuck without access to our systems remotely because we had never exercised that option before. Uh, and while we did get VPNs in place and we did have a certain amount of endpoint security in place, our business users, which were largely procurement and finance and accounts teams, back office teams, who are responsible to provide daily reporting to the management to analyze the previous year's performance and also get budgets in place for this year. They were the ones facing a challenge, and it reached a point where the management was frustrated because they were not able to get accurate reporting, and if at all they ever got an accurate report, it was always a day late, one day too late. And that got frustrating because it wasn't because users were not trying, it was because the systems were slow, and when 25 odd concurrent users access that server on which SAP was running, they were not able to get the desired output. So what we did is we decided, let's look at re-architecting our SAP deployment. We also decided to upgrade our version of SAP, and we decided to migrate this to AWS. And it was, I've mentioned there, in under 3 weeks, in 13 working days to be precise, that we were able to migrate our entire SAP environment to the AWS cloud. And we decided, let's have all our resources who need access to access SAP through AWS Workspace. Uh, so it ensured also the security of that data, even though the data was now on the cloud and this was critical data out of SAP. We were able to ensure that users only access this through AWS Workspace and not they don't get to uh, download that data onto their endpoints, right? What happened after that? We were able to do this in 13 days. We were able to then really accelerate the need for reporting, or fulfill that need for reporting that the management wanted. But then also the success of this project also has now led us to move all of our systems one by one, whether it's the mailing, the HRMS, uh, or internal intranet portals that we have, which were running out of our data center. They are all being migrated to the AWS cloud because of the flexibility that it gives us, and also because we've seen employee productivity really go up, which has caused us to think that a remote working option may be the best option for the future. So we are preparing for that, and we're seeing the cloud being a real help, or rather AWS in particular, really helping us in that journey, right? So this case study was published by Lauren a couple of weeks ago, and soon will be published by AWS as well. And I'll be sure to share a link with all of you on that as well, right? And lastly, I just want to finish up by sharing with you a little bit on how we can help. So Lauren, along with Redington and AWS, while we have a each of these entities have a presence in India as well as the Middle East, out of which we also service Africa. We can help you with the following services, right? One is we give cloud advisory services, right? Right from how you need to adopt the cloud, that first baby step that you can take towards cloud adoption, where to start, right? Then looking at migrations. So if you have workloads on premise, just like I spoke about SAP, right from ERP systems like that, or even uh, approval systems or HRMS applications or supply chain applications, whether it's Microsoft workloads, Windows, Oracle workloads, or even SAP workloads, we can help you migrate those applications to the cloud, right? Uh, Thirdly, optimization. We believe that the cloud journey never stops once you've completed your migration to the cloud. But it really continues because there is so much scope to really optimize technically as well as commercially when you move to the cloud. So we provide those services where existing cloud users as well as those who are migrating can really get some help on how to optimize billing, how to optimize technically on their architectures as well, right? And lastly is on the innovation side. So if you're already looking at if you're already on the cloud and you've been leveraging whether it's AWS or any other cloud, uh, if you're looking to innovate, we can really help you with services around technical related services around modernization of your applications to containers or Docker images, microservices based architectures, or even looking to innovate with new solutions. We can really help you with some native development leveraging platform as a service from AWS, right? Secondly, a really broad term is TCO analysis. So we help customers really, or rather, help CIOs and IT teams really build a business case to move to the cloud. So very often we've entered into conversations where our customers, after doing a little bit of a price comparison with an on-premise server versus a virtual machine on the cloud, they always come back saying a virtual machine seems a little bit more expensive. I don't think we ever had a scenario where a virtual machine on the cloud was cheaper than an on-premise server of a particular configuration. But then we've been still able to help those customers in their migration journeys because we've been able to do an entire end-to-end TCO analysis where we don't just look at the cost of uh, a server configuration, but we look at the end-to-end cost, whether it is the cost of real estate, the cost of capital, the cost of operations or your resources that are managing that infrastructure, all of those costs, right, from your power supply to your cabling to your devices. We look at all those different cost elements, including labor, and we help CIOs really build business cases that are presentable to management to justify this migration, right? We also engage on proof of concepts, so we can definitely work with AWS and Redington if any proof of concepts are required. If you want to test out a workload on the cloud and just see if it works well for you, if you want to get a flavor of how cloud pricing works, of your bandwidth requirements from the cloud, a POC is the go-to if you want to do that. Uh, we also provide managed services to customers. So usually customers roughly billing in the region of 10 to 20,000 AED per month would be keen to look at outsourcing managed services for their cloud environments because as your bill goes up and your consumption of the cloud goes up, you want to make sure that it's being managed properly, that the security of your infrastructure is being monitored, that the utilization of your infrastructure is being monitored, and we provide 24 by 7 managed services to do that. Right, and lastly is our cloud security service that we offer, where we do, especially if you're in a regulated industry and there are some compliances that need to be taken care of, some assessments that need to be done around security. We can help you with that to ensure that, if not as secure, definitely we can help you ensure that your cloud workloads are even more secure, probably than even the on-premise infrastructure, right? So we give you security services as well. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. I'd just like to open it up now to some questions. I'd be happy to address your questions along with my colleague Mushtaq and with Junaid from Redington as well. So over to all of you. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
No, I think we are good, Kyle. Uh,
All right.
yeah,
All right,
sounds
thank
good.
you so much, everyone, for your patience and for listening. I hope I was able to share a little bit on how Lauren is kind of our perspective on digital transformation, especially during a time where the remote workforce is coming into prominence, and how we can make sure that how we can help you to really ensure that as IT we are at the forefront managing this. I thank you once again, and thank you, Junaid and the Redington team, the AWS team, as well as Mushtaq. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Kyle, for such an insightful session. And thank you guys for
My
attending.
pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.